How can I explain Colourpuncture in a couple of words? So there is a physical part of it and there is a psycho-emotional part of it. And when I'm saying psycho-emotional part of it, we're talking about treatment of deep-held, deep-embedded patterns that we all have, which embedded so on unconscious levels that we don't even register. It's like we are that, but we don't see ourselves. We are inside the bottle, but we cannot read the label. And we wish that somebody can read the label of the bottle we are in and tell us, and then everything will be clear. So, in terms of physical diseases, what Colourpuncture can give you is sustainable healing. It will not give you maybe not quick results, but it will give you sustainable results. I'll give you an example. I also do acupuncture, and for me, colds and flus and all this kind of respiratory infections have been a favorite topic ever since I was born. At some point, I decided to address the whole thing with Colourpuncture, and I really religiously did everything which in my Colourpuncture book on the subject of sinusitis and colds and flus and all those things. I did it for several months, and I didn't have a single cold for 2 years at all, even with provocation. By provocation, I meant that once I deliberately tried, I don't advise you to do it, but I tried it because, I'm an ex-scientist, I like playing. I had scratchy throat, beginning of a cold, and we happened to stay with my husband in a spa hotel just this night when I had this cold and everything. And they had this, cold plunge, ice plunge, where you plunge into ice cold water. And I had developing cold, so he said, no way, you're not going to do that. I said, no, of course I am. So I did my Colourpuncture treatment and I plunged into this ice cold water, and guess what? Nothing happened. Now, from acupuncture point of view, this is total madness, because acupuncture says no provocation. So 2 years I didn't have a single cold with provocations. After that, there was a stressful period of my life, actually, when I started learning acupuncture. And I thought, great, there is a magical treatment in acupuncture, 4 needles, and you're totally free of cold, like in a couple of hours, just 4 needles. And the result is about 9 out of 10. So I thought, great, just 4 needles, I'll try acupuncture. Now, what acupuncture does for me, and this is to say that actually, even so from time to time, I'm getting a beginning of cold, and even if I'm developing some kind of cold, it's never, ever the level of magnitude it used to be. So if it used to be 10, now it is 2. Now when I feel like I cool down too much, when I drink cold liquids, for example, it affects me a lot, and I do this 4 needles. So what acupuncture does, it removes the symptoms immediately, but guess what? A couple of weeks after, if I'm stressed, if there is emotional upheaval, if there is something else, it can start creeping back. With Colourpuncture, this does not happen. Colourpuncture gives you straight about 2 years from, according to my observations, overall, 2 years total remission. And after that, if problem starts coming back, it's never come back as bad. So this is physical side. Psycho-emotional side, really interesting. So I'll give you again my example just because it's very quick. Once upon a time, on my training, I received therapy called prenatal therapy, which is supposed to clean the patterns around your birth and pregnancy. And the story about my birth is very simple. My parents wanted a boy, and I was the second girl. And I always knew about it. It never bothered me, to be honest. And by that time, I already have my 2 boys. And I can share their frustration, because if my boys would be girls, I would be disappointed. By the time my 3rd one was born, I didn't care if it's a boy or a girl. But with the first one, my God, it had to be a boy. So I knew about it, it never bothered me. Now, somebody gives me prenatal. And before that, I was non-sensitive at all. And suddenly, what I see during this, I see the big word, expectations. And it immediately dawned on me that my entire life, I was living with some kind of expectations on me, and my expectations on other people, and this was something so embedded into who I was that I didn't realize even that there was a problem. Next, what happened, I really cried. I get outside of the room and I sat and cried, and everybody was like, yes, at least she's feeling something. Next thing was, this was in England, and I was an English-speaking group. Apart from me, everybody else was British. And of course, I realized that actually I had expectation of myself to speak perfect English. Nobody had this expectation on me. Everybody was fine with my English. But I wasn't. I had these expectations that like I had to be perfect. Next thing was happened without me doing it consciously, but unconsciously. Would you believe it or not, it was in a dining room. I sat and I started eating salad with my hands. I have no idea why I've done that. But this moment, it was like everything dissipated. I almost like there was a permission granted from somewhere for me to drop any expectations. And lots of things changed since. So this is how Colourpuncture can highlight your software which you run on without realizing it. And because this is so embedded by things like that, as I said, consciously I knew about it. And this is something that very eloquently one of my patients said. Colourpuncture, basically, what it does, it makes you feel what you always knew. And at the surface, it doesn't seem much. But if you think about it, basically, you start owning your entire life experience. Your emotions, your feelings, your perceptions, your memories. You start owning who you are and what are you doing. And from this point, you can actually change something. Because before, you sort of can change something, but it's never sustainable if it's not coming in full alignment with who you are. And who you are, I don't mean this is one of the big questions in Colourpuncture, but by who you are, I don't mean what you do for a living or what you do for a hobby. It's who we are as a playful soul. It's this kind of who we are. What our real essence? I always thought I was a scientist, and for 15 years I was in science, and this was like a firmly, I had my PhD, I had my years in university. It was like so firmly embedded identities. But then, basically one day I realized I never was even a scientist. I never was even a therapist, even though I am a therapist now and I teach and I do all those things. Basically, I'm somebody completely different. I'm somebody who likes adventure. Would you believe it or not? I realized one day. So this is how it works.